When the tide is low, you can still see the bones of a city lost to the sea. Along the eastern coast of England, where cliffs crumble and winds howl across the grey North Sea, lies a shoreline like no other. Beneath these shallow waves rest the remnants of Dunwich, a once thriving medieval port, now almost entirely erased from the land, but not from history. This isn't legend. It isn't folklore. Dunwich was real. Centuries ago, it rivaled London in size, with stone churches, cobbled streets, and a booming harbor. Today, almost all of it is gone, swallowed by the sea, piece by piece, storm by storm. But when the tide recedes, fragments return. A collapsed wall, a line of ancient foundation stones. The ruins speak, not in myths, but in facts. This is the true story of how nature erased an entire English city, and why its ghost still surfaces, centuries later. Dunwich at its peak, historical records. In 1086, the name Dunwich appeared in the Domesday Book, England's earliest land and population survey. It was already a place of significance. A busy coastal town with hundreds of residents, fishing fleets, and its own parish church. But that was only the beginning. By the 13th century, Dunwich had grown into one of the largest ports in all of eastern England. Nearly 4,000 people lived here. A massive population for its time, rivaling even London. The town boasted 8 stone churches, 2 monasteries, a mint, a marketplace, and an expansive harbor. Merchant ships came and went daily, trading wool, salt, and grain across the North Sea. Dunwich was not just prosperous, it was powerful. A regional center of faith, commerce, and maritime ambition. For a moment in history, it looked unstoppable. The sea begins to claim it. Factual accounts. It began with storms. In the year 1286, a massive tempest struck the Suffolk coast. The sea surged inland, destroying homes and carving into the soft cliffs. Records from nearby monasteries speak of harbor walls torn apart, bridges swept away, and whole neighborhoods drowned overnight. But the worst was yet to come. In 1326, another violent storm battered Dunwich. Then again in 1347. These weren't isolated disasters. They were part of a relentless pattern. With each storm, more of Dunwich disappeared into the sea. Streets, homes, churches, entire sections of the city collapsed. The coastline was retreating, and the town's foundations, built on soft sandy soil, could not hold. What once stood firm for centuries began to slip beneath the waves. The city vanishes, data and physical evidence. Over the next 2 centuries, the destruction continued, slow but unstoppable. The sea didn't take Dunwich in one great flood. It ate it away, inch by inch. By the early 1400s, the town had lost over half its original area. By 1600, more than 90% of Dunwich had vanished beneath the waves. Stone churches, market squares, entire neighborhoods gone. Today, only a few structures remain on land. The rest, including at least 8 known churches, lie beneath the North Sea. Coastal erosion maps show the shoreline has moved nearly 2 kilometers inland since medieval times, and it's still moving. Modern measurements confirm the cliffs continue to retreat by about 1 to 2 meters per year. Dunwich didn't fall to fire or war. It fell to the ocean, slowly, methodically, over generations. Archaeological proof beneath the sea. For centuries, the ruins of Dunwich lay hidden beneath murky waves. Out of sight, but never out of memory. Then, in the early 2000s, a team from the University of Southampton began an ambitious underwater survey. Using multi-beam sonar, and subsea mapping, they scanned the seafloor just off the modern coastline. What they found confirmed the stories. Deep below the surface were the outlines of walls, foundations, and building clusters, consistent with medieval stone churches and civic buildings. The remains of St. Peter's Church, once the town's grandest structure, were traced in full. Even roads, long since washed away from land, were visible as faint scars beneath the sand. And when the tide is especially low, especially calm, fragments emerge. Broken masonry, stone footings, solid physical proof of a city that truly stood and truly fell. Dunwich today. What still exists on land? Today, Dunwich is little more than a village. A few dozen homes, a small museum, and silence. The once mighty port, once echoing with markets and church bells, has faded into the cliffs. The only structure of note still standing is St. James' Church, perched precariously near the eroding edge. Behind it lies a cemetery, but even that is vanishing. Over the past decades, dozens of graves have tumbled down the cliff as the sea continues to advance. Headstones now lie shattered on the shore below, some swept away entirely. The coastline is marked with warning signs. Active coastal erosion zone, do not approach. And yet, visitors still come, not for what Dunwich is now, but for what it used to be, a city lost, but never fully forgotten. The effort to reconstruct and remember. Though most of Dunwich now lies beneath the sea, researchers have worked for decades to bring its story back to the surface. In 2008, a team from the University of Southampton, led by Dr. David Sear, began an unprecedented underwater mapping project. Combining historical records, sonar data, and digital modeling, they recreated the layout of medieval Dunwich in 3D, street by street, church by church. Their findings were later displayed at the Dunwich Museum, allowing visitors to walk through a lost city, virtually. Meanwhile, English Heritage continues to monitor the coast, documenting erosion, and preserving what little remains on land. Aerial scans, ground-penetrating radar, archival reconstruction. It's not just archaeology, it's memory, a way to hold on to a city that the sea refuses to return. Why it wasn't saved, and what it means for the future. You might ask, why didn't they save it? Why did a great English city vanish, without walls to hold the sea back? The answer lies in time and in money. In the Middle Ages, there was no coastal defense technology, no engineering powerful enough to resist the open sea. And as the town declined, so did its wealth. By the time the waves came hardest, Dunwich had nothing left to fight with. It was, quite simply, cheaper to let it drown. But the story doesn't end with Dunwich. Around the world today, entire cities face similar threats. Rising tides, subsiding land, eroding shores. Jakarta, Venice, Miami, all stand where Dunwich once stood, between land, sea, and the clock. And the question still echoes, will we hold the water back, or will the tide write the ending for us, just as it did for Dunwich? Closing. Reflective and emotional. Dunwich was once alive, a city of stone and salt, prayer and purpose. People were born here. They lived, they built, they believed it would last. But the sea had other plans. What remains now is not just ruin. It's a record, a memory carved into the coastline. When the tide is low, you can still see the fragments. Not to mourn them, but to remember. Because no city, no matter how great, is immune to time or to water. And Dunwich reminds us, sometimes history isn't buried. It's just underwater. If stories like this speak to you, stories of real places, real lives, and how they quietly slipped from memory, then there's more waiting. Across Europe, entire towns have vanished. Beneath lakes, forests, fields of grass, each one leaves a trace, if you know where to look. Subscribe to Dark Hidden History and follow the echoes of what time tried to erase.
More stories they tried to erase.